Hello, welcome to No Beef Just Party and the beginning of a new kind of series of videos where I do a wee little bit of deck building from scratch, and I try and build a deck around a particular objective card. And I hope this is kind of interesting. Initially it was just going to be a kind of one video, but after I did the objectives, I noticed how long that took. So it's going to be in three parts. Part one, I'll run through the objectives. Part two, ploys and upgrades. Part three, it's kind of a review of how the deck went. So do let me know what you think and enjoy the video. The first in the series is going to be a deck built around the brand new objective, Set the Tempo. Let's get started. The card I mentioned, Set the Tempo. Here we go. So it is a 3 glory scoring card. So that's a big scoring card. And it's a dual card. So both of these conditions need to be met. And you score this in an end phase if you have scored 2 or more dual objectives and 2 or more hybrid objective cards. And you have scored 6 or more objective cards. So if you are a wily Underworlds veteran, you will be familiar of a card in Shadespire, which was Superior Tactician, which if you scored 6 or more objectives, you got 3 glory. It was a card that everyone ended up taking, and I think it was on the very original FAR list, or it might have been the second one. But it did get restricted very early. But people still took it because it was that strong and that easy to score. I've mentioned in a previous video that you can tell now that they are looking at Shadespire, looking at some of the mechanics that they kind of got wrong. And they're tweaking them a bit. And this is an example of that with a card. And so you've got that score 6 or more objective cards. But you've got the added extra there of 2 of them have to be dual and 2 of them have to be hybrid, which does limit who you're going to be able to do this with in a kind of successful way. So I guess where I would initially be starting with this is I'll be looking at dual and I'll be looking at hybrid cards just to see which ones are kind of better to score. So let's scroll down here. We've got a nice filter section here, which we can clear. I'm not going to clear it for me, thank you. And so we'll look at dual cards first. Let's see what it brings up for us. But I think what we need to do is possibly look first of all at just the faction specific ones, just to see which ones are best. Okay, so this is just dual. Okay, so the dual faction cards, first of all, if you're looking at the spoilers, they have 2, proven superiority, so which score this in an end phase if any enemy leaders are out of action and your leader is not out of action. That's it's 2 glory, so it's a big spender, but that's quite a tough, particularly for them, that's quite a tough card to score. And then survival of the fittest, score this in an end phase if there are 1 or more surviving friendly fighters and 5 or more fighters are out of action. It's quite a Reavers type card, isn't it? So it's not just yours, but you could be quite limited because if you're playing an elite warband, that's going to be quite a tough card to score. So at the minute, for me, Reavers probably a no for this particular deck that I'm going to be building. Now we've got the Man Trappers, always moving. Score this in an end phase if there is at least 1 surviving friendly fighter and there are no friendly fighters in your territory. 2 points. That's going to be quite tough to score as well, because I think particularly when you are you don't have to be that far forward with man trappers, and he's just one surviving friendly fighter though, but I think that's going to be quite tough to score. Hunter's Feast, this one's a surge card, so it automatically has a bit of an advantage there. And score this immediately when your leader's attack action takes an enemy fighter out of action, and your leader made one or more attack actions that took an enemy fighter out of action earlier in this phase. So basically, if you've killed 2 people in this phase, which is possible with his, he's got his range attack, and he's got a really good sort of up close melee attack as well. So I think that's a possibility for these guys. So maybe we're looking at the man trappers. Now everyone else just has 1, which is a slight kind of disadvantage. But let's have a look. So Triumphant Stance from the new Coven. Duels score this in an end phase if 1 friendly fighter is holding an objective and no other fighter is holding an objective. 2 points. With this feed the Beastgrave meta that's potentially kind of on the horizon, this could be that could be a good card for them to score. Rippers, it's a dual one. You'll see it's got a little fire next to it, so it's a very popular card with Rippers players. Dual, score this in an end phase if 2 or more enemy fighters are out of action and 1 or more friendly fighters are in enemy territory. Rippers are very aggro. Rippers, you're not sitting back, you're just tearing in, trying to get the kill. That's a really good card. It's probably the best one out of all of these at the moment, and puts Rippers in quite a nice place to be the people I'm going to be using for this. Next up, Cry of the Wild for the Guardians. Score this in an end phase if a friendly Carthane made the Hunting Horn action in the previous phase and there is a friendly Carthane. Oh, sorry, this isn't Guardians, is it? The call is Scathe. The colour threw me. That seems quite an easy one to score because you'd just sit at the back, wouldn't you? So that's quite an easy one to score, I think. So that kind of, again, that puts them up there with Rippers. And then Nurgle, Chosen Warriors, score this in an end phase if there are 1 or more surviving friendly fighters and 3 or more enemy fighters are out of action. Once they're inspired, that's quite easy to score, but tough early doors. So a lot of these dual cards are contenders for, if it's in your opening hand, you might end up mulligan, which is going to make it really hard to score your objective at the end. I do realise I've missed out the Dreadfang people, who I know have quite a few duels. So the Condemners, first of all, their first one, Etheric Mastery. Score this in an end phase if there are 2 or more surviving friendly fighters and all friendly fighters are inspired. Ooh, that's quite a good one. Stormforged Heroes. Score this in an end phase if there are 2 or more surviving friendly fighters and each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more upgrades. Again, that seems quite good. Strength and Unity. Score this in an end phase if there are 2 or more surviving friendly fighters and each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more move tokens and or each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more charge tokens or a guard token. So these are quite good because they do seem quite scoreable in the first round, apart from maybe the first one. And then Wrathful Blow, score is a surge and a duel. Score this immediately if a friendly fighter's attack action takes an enemy fighter out of action, and that friendly fighter has 1 or more wound tokens. So that's quite a tough one to score, particularly at the minute. You're almost going to have an arms race in the meta now, where lots of people are going to be looking at ways to be able, particularly in a tournament, they want to have in their deck a way of one-shotting an orc, and that could, and I think people, it may be a scenario now where people might hold off until making that attack until they know that they'll be able to kill something, as opposed to doing it in 2 turns. But they're in quite a good position because there's 4 there, which is quite good. And then Lady Harrows, who one of my favourite warbands. Bitter Embrace. Score this in an end phase if there are 2 or more surviving friendly fighters, and each surviving friendly fighter is adjacent to 1 or more enemy fighters. Okay, that could be quite easy for them to score. It is their Inspire mechanic is to go through people as well, so you can easily end up next to somebody. Creeping Dread, score this in end phase if there are 3 or more surviving friendly fighters, and each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more move and or charge tokens. Again, fairly easy to score for those guys. That's 2 cards that I tend to put in my deck for these anyway. Ghostly Torment, score this in an end phase if there are 2 or more surviving friendly fighters, and 2 or more surviving fighters each have 1 or more wound tokens. Now that's down as a hot card. I mean, it seems quite tough to score, in my opinion, as 2 of the... Well, in fact, they can all get one-shotted. And the final one... no, there's 2 more, sorry. One will. This is restricted. A Surge and dual card. Score this immediately if your warband holds 1 or more even-numbered objectives, and your warband holds 1 or more odd-numbered objectives. Even though it's restricted, it's such an easy card to score. Get it in that deck. And then Tide of Malice, score this in an end phase if there are 2 or more surviving friendly fighters, and each surviving friendly fighter is inspired. Okay, so again, that's... Okay, so looking at these so far, the 3 that I'd be looking at taking would either be one of the Dreadfanes or possibly Rippers or Skaith. So they're the 4 we're going to look at. Set the tempo, so you need to be able to score 2, and then it's hybrid cards that are next. So these are probably the tough ones. I'm not sure how many faction-specific hybrid cards these guys have. Just the one, Hunt's End. Score this in an end phase if an enemy fighter with a wounds characteristic 4 or greater is out of action, or your warband holds 3 or more objectives. It's the dual cards, though, isn't it, that are going to be... I mean, that dual card's very easy for Skaiths to score, and Hunt's End... Potentially. But I'm still kind of thinking the Dreadfane warbands for this. But let's look at the universal cards now and see which ones kind of fit better with Skaiths. I think Rippers are probably out now, so it's either Skaiths and one of the Dreadfane ones. So we'll stick with hybrid. So there are 9 to choose from. Sorry, 8, because one of them set the tempo. So there is 8 to choose from. So Adaptive Strategy. Score this in an end phase if you have scored 5 or more hybrid objective cards. I mean, that's quite a tough card to score. So that brings it down to 7 to choose from. So Awesome Resilience. Score this in an end phase if each surviving friendly fighter has no wound tokens, or you healed friendly fighters of 3 or more wound tokens in the previous phase. So with no healing, not much healing available to those 3, I'm not sure that's one that kind of matches up. Each surviving friendly fighter has no wound tokens. I'm not too sure about that one. Beyond Mortal, score this in an end phase if a friendly fighter has 4 or more wound tokens, or a surviving friendly fighter has a move and or wounds characteristics of 8 or more. That seems quite... A move and wound characteristics of 8 or more. Could do it with Harrows. Could possibly do that with Harrows. Hybrid, score this in an end phase if each surviving friendly fighter is adjacent to 1 or more enemy fighters, or 1 or more friendly fighters are each adjacent to 3 or more enemy fighters. Okay. It is an end phase card, so it's quite a dangerous one, but if you had it in your hand and you went last, it could work. Works well with the Dreadfane people because both Harrows and Iron Souls will be quite scrappy, will have reasons to be up in the grill. Okay. Next up, Gathered Momentum. This is probably the one that everyone is familiar with. It's used quite a lot. It is a surge card as well. If you score your second or subsequent surge objective card in a phase, or a friendly fighter makes a charge action and ends that action 5 or more hexes from the hex in which they begun. So that's going in no matter what. So that's one of the hybrid boxes ticked. I think ideally you probably would want to take 3 or maybe 4 hybrid cards, and then maybe 3 duels, possibly, but let's have a look. Show of Force, score this immediately after an activation if 3 or more friendly fighters are in enemy territory, or 1 or more friendly fighters each have 3 or more upgrades. That's such a good hybrid card, and it's a surge. I'm going to stick that in no matter what as well. I'm starting to lean, I think Skates are out now, and I'm starting to lean towards one of the Dreadfane warbands. So Show of Force, that is definitely going in. The Great Hunt, score this in an end phase if 1 or more friendly hunters each have 3 or more upgrades, or 3 or more friendly hunters each have... there's not hunters in the deck that I'm going to be using, I don't think, if it's just Dreadfane, so I'm going to ignore that one. And then Unexpected Pitfall, Surge, Hybrid, score this immediately after an enemy fighter is taken out of action by Lethal Hex, or an enemy fighter is taken out of action by damage dealt by Gambit you played. I think that's going to go in. I'm leaning towards Iron Souls for this, I think. So I'm going to put that in for now. It is a surge, so I've got 3 surge spaces left. But I think those hybrids are quite good to score. And I think they might be the 3. That might be the 3 I keep. Okay, so 13, 12 because of set the tempo. Let's have a look. The new card, Absolute Stillness. Score this in an end phase if a friendly quarry is holding your objective. I'm going to say no to that. I think I'm going to be going aggro Iron Souls. Brought to Bay. Friendly hunter makes an attack action. Such a good card though. Really good for rippers. But I don't have a hunter. Dug In, score this if your warband holds 3 or more objectives and your warband held 3 or more objectives at the start of the round. That's not something that I'll be taking. Meticulous Strategy, score this in an end phase if you have scored 3 or more dual objective cards. So not a dual card, but that might go in. Let's put that in as a maybe anyway. Okay, Path to Victory, score this in an end phase if 1 or more enemy fighters were taken out of action in the previous phase and your warband holds 2 or more objectives. That's a maybe as well. Swift Capture, score this immediately after an activation if your warband holds 1 or more objectives in friendly territory and your warband holds 1 or more objectives in enemy territory. Now, the duels are making me swing back to Harrows. It's making me swing back to Harrows. Let's get rid of strategy. Meticulous strategy. I think it's making me want to change to Harrows. So if it's Harrows, this works really well. Your warband holds one or more objectives in friendly territory. Yep. Another duel if there are 2 or more surviving friendly fighters and each surviving made 1 or more. Yep. Okay, Triumphant Hunt. Score this in end phase if 3 or more enemy fighters are out of action and at least 1 enemy quarry is out of action. That's a no for me. Uncontested. Score this in an end phase if your warband holds 2 or more objectives and no enemy fighters hold objectives. I'm going to stay away from that one. Bold Conquest. Score this immediately after activation if your leader made a charge action in that activation and your leader is holding an objective. It is a surge. I have 2 surge slots left. I'm gonna ignore that because the surge is. I'm gonna go Lady Harrows. I'm locking that in now. They've got some good surge cards. Finders of the Way. Score this in an end phase if there are 3 or more surviving friendly fighters and each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more cursed key upgrade. No, because I'm gonna ignore that one. Guardians of the Way. Your warband holds 1 or more objectives, and no enemy warband holds any objectives. I'm going to say no to that as well. So, pardon me. So what we have at the minute, we have a surge hybrid, 2 surge hybrids, 2 surge duels. Oh no, sorry. I apologise. 3 surge hybrids, 1 surge duel, and 1 duel. I think I want to have probably a couple more. So I want 2 more surges. Let's go with the Dreadfane Lady Harrow ones to start with. I realise I've taken out the tempo cards, so I just need to put that back in quickly. You can set the tempo in there. So we have Gathered Momentum, Show of Force, Swift Capture, Unexpected Pitfall. I'm now undecided on Unexpected Pitfall, but let's go and look at these dual cards for the Harrows. Okay, so I mentioned 1 will. That's going straight in. There we go. Lovely. Very easy for them to score. And so I have 1 more surge card left. I need to get rid of that universal. Do apologise. So did they not have another surge duel? They didn't. Okay, so let's just look at the duels. Score this in end phase if there are 2 or more surviving friendly fighters. Each surviving friendly fighter is adjacent to 1 or more enemy fighters. I'm not sure about that one. Creeping Dread, yes, I'm going to put that in. I'm going to be moving, I'm going to be charging. I think I'm going to be quite aggressive with these. Ghostly Torment, there are 2 or more surviving friendly fighters. 2 or more surviving fighters each have 1 or more win tokens. I'm going to avoid that, I think. I'm going to avoid that card. Tide of Malice, there are 2 or more surviving friendly fighters and each surviving friendly fighter is inspired. How many dual cards do I have? I want to have 3, I think. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, they're the 4 that I'm going to run with here, I think. They're the 4 I'm going to go with. And then how many hybrids do we have? 1, 2, 3. 3 hybrids. Do I want another hybrid card, or do we think that's enough? They're quite easy to score hybrid cards, I think. I think they're quite easy to score hybrid cards. Unexpected Pitfall is probably a little bit tougher with these guys, maybe, but that's where the gambits are going to come into play, I think. Yeah, I think that's going to be... I'm locking those in. So I have 4 more objectives to choose. The Lady Harrows have some really good objectives anyway, so let's go through these and have a look at this. Dominion of Death, score this in the 3rd end phase if you have scored the most objective cards. Apologies for the horse noise. Is that a trap card? I think that might be a trap card. Possibly a trap card. So I've got 1 more surge to pick, and I want to pick one of these surges. So I think it's going to be Fleeting Memories, which score immediately when a friendly fighter finishes a move action and ended 2 or more different hexes that contained an objective during the move action. Although Inescapable Hunger is also really good. Let's go Inescapable Hunger, because I think that's quite... Not Inescapable Hunger. No, Fleeting Memories. I think. You can set it up easily so that you have 2 objectives ready there to be kind of moved through. So yeah, we'll go Fleeting Memories. And that is all my surge cards. So we've got 3 more end phase cards to get. Let me just close that. So that's all of the surge cards. So we've got 3 end phase cards to go. Total Glory 11. That's not going to cut it at the minute. So I probably want a couple of kind of like easy scoring cards in there. The one that jumps out to the end, I think that's got to go in. Here we go. No power cards left in your deck, basically. Quite easy to score these days, particularly with the amount of cards that you do now get to be able to kind of burn through your deck. So what are the next 2? So from a completely kind of lazy perspective, let's first of all look at the ladies. Okay, so right, let's have a look at these. Score this in invasive and more enemy fighters up and friendly fight. That's going to be tough. Nexus of Terror. Score this in invasive if your warband holds the most objectives. I'm going to stay away from these, I think. 3rd end phase. If you have scored the most objective cards. It is such a good card, and with 6 fairly easy to score surges, that's good. However, if I draw that out with Set the Tempo, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. So I'm going to stay away from that card, I think. Going to stay away from any third end phase cards. Although Set the Tempo is just an end phase, I want to, if I draw that card out first, I want to know that I've got 2 other cards with it that I can potentially... I don't want to have to brick that hand if I draw it out. So let's move on from that. No third end phase cards. So let's just look at end phase cards, the universal ones. Let's see what we can get. So there's 200 to choose from almost. So we're going to go hot tournament cards. That does whittle it down to just cards that are really rather ruddy good. 45 entries. Let's just fly through here. So fired up, score this if at least 1 surviving friendly fighter is inspired. That's very easy to do. That's off the bat. That will go in. Solid gains. Score this in end phase if you've gained at least all 3 glory. Maybe. Calculated risk. No. Lethal X's don't do anything. Great gains. Score this in end phase if you've gained at least 5 glory points in this round. Possibly. Path to victory. We've seen that duel uncontested. We've seen that supremacy I want to avoid. Temporary victory. Going to avoid that. Let's see what restricted. Because am I going to be using any kind of restricted? You know, I want to keep them for gambits and upgrades. Branching Fate. Score this immediately if you roll 3 or more dice in an attack or defense roll and they all show a different symbol. Possibly that one. Cover Ground. Score this immediately if a friendly fighter makes a move action of 6 or more hexes. There we go. That's quite an easy one for the ladies to score. There's a lot in there. It's a surge. No, get out. I can't do that one. I need to take... There we go, end phase. Right, get rid of that. Keep chopping. No, digging deep. Score this in end phase. There we go, digging deep, because I'm going to be drawing cards as well as quite easy to score surge objectives. So, total glory 15. Not ideal, but there are ways to add on that. And I'm going to be quite aggressive with these guys as well, I think. More so than usual. When I do play Lady Harrows, they are usually quite... I'm just objective grabbing. But this makes them a little bit different. As you can see with the fighter cards, they're not terrible. They're not terrible, and once they do inspire, Lady Harrow gets Cleave, the Anguished one gets their funky things, the Maidens chucking 4. In fact, when they're all inspired, apart from the Widow, they are all chucking more than 3 dice. That's interesting. So Branch and Fate might be a card to take. I'm not sure. No, we'll lock it in at that. I'm happy with that. There's no third end phase card in there to kind of interfere with if I do pull up Set the Tempo. And these are all quite easy to score end phase cards. So I shouldn't really need to mulligan my objectives, which is great. I always tend to make that mistake where I include maybe 2 cards that could, 2 or 3 cards even that might clash with that opening hand that you get. But I'm really happy with those objectives. Let us know what you think in the comments. These objectives, particularly with this, with Lady Harrows, would you have chosen them? I'm going to grab a brew and then I'm going to crack on with the next stage, which is the Gambits.